So the big headline today is, of course, what happened yesterday. Late afternoon, the communication that came from the head of public service and chief of staff on what the president has decided to do with regards to the issues surrounding KEMSA. He's decided basically take the big broom, sweep. The CEO, the board have basically been told go home, and a new chair and new board have been appointed and already gazetted, and also an acting CEO has been appointed. And this is Dr. Mulwa, who's been the Director of Medical Services in charge of preventive and promotive health, who's now been told, go there and act as CEO at KEMSA.
Yeah.
If you look at it in terms of what the president has done, people are saying, hey, this is a big one by the president. This is a big statement by the president. Do you read it as a big statement by the president in terms of you have basically started by saying the PS in charge of public health out, the board go home, the CEO suspended, and I'm putting in together a new board. Obviously, there's now a vacancy for a position of PS. PS has not even served 6 months in office.
No. It was January, February is when we saw the PSs come in. Look, it's a big statement, whichever way you want to look at it. If you're looking at it purely surface level, then you say, well, okay, a very big statement coming from the president in the sense that if there is even a whiff of anything going south, if there is a whiff of any kind of nonsense, as it were, the president is going to say, no, this is not what we agreed on. Everybody out. Let's put in somebody new. We're not even going to waste time. It didn't take 4 days since we saw the first report, and we're on a Monday morning, Monday afternoon, and we see this shake up, everybody out and bring in new people. It could be a big statement there that where he's saying he's going to deal with this thing with a no-nonsense hand, and that is how we're going to go forward. Big statement, isn't it? So that anybody else who's sitting in whatever quarter says, you know what, we ought to be very careful, because if we muck up, we could also be finding our way out the door. So it's a big statement coming from him in that manner. It also could be a big statement in the sense that things that had been carried out in the way they had been historically is not going to be taken anymore, will not be tolerated. That you will say, look, KEMSA had been riddled by scandal in the last 5 years. There have been so many things that have happened. Could be saying, you know what, there's a new sheriff in town, and this is the way we're going to ride. If I hear that anything like this is going on, I'm not going to sit back and take it and allow things to go completely south. So another big statement coming from him in that sense, like, no, it's not going to be things as normal. And normal being that you're allowed to do whatever you wanted, billions of shillings being lost, certain individuals lining their pockets and becoming billionaires. We're not going to allow that happen anymore. So that's another big statement that he could be making. Or the final one is, or maybe the third one that I'm thinking of, there could be many more. That, you know what, things are going to go our way, the way we want them to. These are the friends that we've decided to have, being the West. And if you do anything that is going to compromise our relationship with them, those of you, whether you walked into the office, whether you breathed in a particular direction on that certain day, if you stood downwind and it blew in that direction, all of you out. You're not like going to compromise our relationship.
What?
So whichever way you look at it, there are statements that are being made here, and he's right at the center of it, and he's the one who's taking the ball by the horns. So take your pick. It could be any one of them, but they're statements, and they're big, and they've been made.
They're being made. City, what do you read from this?
You know, this is the first sacking that we are witnessing this particular government participating in. Okay?
8 months and a day.
Yes.
Since the president was sworn in.
Yes. So everything that Ndu has said would make a lot of sense. Except for one thing. Not to discount the sense, but to consider what else is happening. Okay? Now I want to take you back to the week before last, when we had 4 massive visits to this country.
Yep.
We had the German Chancellor. Excuse me. We had the Japanese Prime Minister. We had the head of IMF.
Yeah.
And we had UN Secretary General. Now, the things, it may seem unrelated, but in my mind, there are few. In such matters, it can't be unrelated. All these bigwigs in Kenya at the same time?
Within a span of 10 days?
No.
Which is why I was saying that there's certain relationships that have been fostered and those go directly with those trips. And this is one of these big statements that's being made here. We have a relationship that we fostered with some of these folks. You, my friends, whatever it looks like is going to taint that relationship, I am not going to have it.
Precisely. I think you, my sister, have gone the heart
What
of
are you
the...
two saying? You're reading a foreign hand in this?
Yes. I don't know. Do is going to suggest. I actually read. This is why I premised my discussion or my response to your question in this manner. Okay? You see, our Ministry of Health is supported enormously by friendly nations. Okay? Global Fund happens one of these organizations that funds us. PEPFAR is another. The EU have their funding. Put it this way. Anything that has to do with the Ministry of Health is something that deals directly with the lives of many Kenyans, most of whom do not have the wherewithal to fend for themselves and can only survive if they are supported. Now, this isn't Kenya money. It is money that people have given to us. And this money they give to us is their taxpayers' money. So the level of accountability that is required of them who give to us is very, very high.
They don't play with it.
So when they demand accountability, that accountability is something that they will push for. Now, how else do you show your partners that you are serious about their donation? And that's why I said, do is right. I'm only saying that it goes beyond what we see on a daily basis. But to answer the question directly in relation to Kenya, the question I would ask is, when we look at KEMSA and we look at the way we run our government, I would have to ask the question, the people whom we see in KEMSA, the people who have gone, who are they aligned to politically? That's the question I would ask.
So now you're localizing it?
Oh, I'm localizing it. It has to be local. All politics is local. Who are they aligned to?
The people who've gone home?
Yes. Who are they aligned to? Don't assume that people who have those high positions just got there by virtue of their merit. They may have, but they are aligned to some individuals. So the question you would ask is, if we look at the alignment, I don't know the alignment yet, but I will find out. When we look at the alignment, the question that you ask has to be asked, what exactly are we seeing? You see, in this country, nothing happens without a reason and then another reason and then a third reason. Nothing happens. Now, KEMSA was at the heart of some really terrible scandals during the COVID era. And this group of people are bet, 6 months into the job? Yes. And now they are gone? No. The other thing you want to bear in mind, and let's not divorce ourselves. Now, someone may say, I'm reaching. I will reach anyway. Or I'm overreaching. Let me overreach. You see, the moment IMF come calling, IMF usually come calling with their rules and regulations of how to behave, when to stand up, when to sit down, when to walk left, when to walk right, when to stay upright, when to sit in the corner. They come with those rules for everything. When I say everything, I mean everything. And if you expect more money, then look, please, show us, for example, of how serious you are with dealing with some of these issues.
So they come up with those stories of good governance and stuff.
Yes. So if the people in KEMSA were the unfortunate ones who had fingers being pointed in their direction, the action was going to fall on them. Because how else do you show you're serious unless you take such action? I would have thought, again, not having worked in government, I would have thought that usually you don't sack. You tell them, move aside as we investigate.
They say for a board, you don't move aside a board. You disband a board.
Okay, then disband them aside.
Board disbanded.
Okay.
CEO and other senior managers. So there are actually other people who are now sent home on compulsory leave. Martin Wamwea, Nelson Karaoke, Pauline Duya, Livingston Jigona, Dr. Charles Karaoke Shege from the ministry, Justice Kinoti, Cosmos Rotich, and Anthony Shege, KEMSA staff affected. Those ones. So the people at the ministry in the National Malaria Program and at the KEMSA were also sent home by the cabinet secretary.
What does being sent home mean?
Suspended.
Wait, we'll
Alright.
call you.
Okay. If they were suspended, not sacked,
See, those ones were suspended. Even the CEO was suspended. Who was sacked? The people who were appointed.
PS.
Board appointed.
PS.
PS appointed. Go. Public servants, we're going to follow due process. And this is where the due process begins.
No.
And I see this, and the reason I'm asking that is I'm thinking, so this is 8 months into William Ruto's presidency, and he has made this first major move in terms of there's an issue here, there's complaints of some scandal, some corruption-related scandal, and I'm taking action. And I look back at what happened, the statement here being a very strongly worded statement that, I will not tolerate. When we asked him during our interview with him on Sunday, he said, I'm taking action. You can rest assured. I'm going to clean KEMSA. Whatever it takes to clean KEMSA, I'm going to clean KEMSA. Wait for action. In 2015, during a State of the Nation address to Parliament, President Uhuru Kenyatta did the same thing. He went to Parliament and he said, in view of the oath of office that I took as the President of this Republic, let it be known that today I draw the line. No one will stand between Kenyans and what is right in the fight against corruption and other monstrous economic crimes. And that's when he also went and said that he has received a report from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. I take the extraordinary step of attaching the aforementioned confidential report from the CEO of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission as an annex to my annual report on values to Parliament. He said, consequently, I hereby direct that all officials of the national and county governments that are adversely mentioned in this report, whether you're a cabinet secretary, the principal secretary, chief executive of a state institution, to immediately step aside pending conclusion of the investigations of the allegations against them. Those that were affected were then cabinet secretaries, several of them. Charity Ngilu was affected. She was in lands and settlement. Michael Kamau was the cabinet secretary in charge of transport. Felix Koskei, the one who's now head of public service, was then the cabinet secretary in charge of agriculture. Kazungu Kambi was in charge of labor. Davis Chirchir was then in charge of energy. He's back in energy. Those ones were the ones who were immediately
out.
And there were PSs as well that were also affected, including Duvamuli, Mutea Iringo, and James Lopoyetum. Okay? So this one was saying, oh my goodness, the president has actually made a very big statement. This one, Uhuru acheze na corruption. This one, people were taken to court, and we all know what happened thereafter. And here we are today. So I'm looking at this and asking myself, okay, I see what the president has done. Is it going to have an effect that is long-lasting?
No.
That runs deep?
No, it won't.
Is his intention to signal that I will not tolerate corruption in my government? And if that is the signal, will that signal actually run across his 5-year term?
When you make strong statements and then you follow them by actions that seem to be strong, it doesn't tell me that this is someone who is trying to eradicate some wrong. What it speaks of is a statement. The statement that follows a previous one, I will not tolerate. So this is how I am not tolerating it. Now, we know that if there's one place the government has a problem, it's always in procurement. We know this. So these people who are appointed, they've been there 6 months. They've lost their jobs. Other people will take these jobs. So are we saying that with this action, we are now guaranteed that similar problems will not occur again? The answer is no, we are not guaranteed. So you asked the question, so the effects that we see, yes, the effects, the optics are good. Some action has been taken, but will this solve the problem? Most definitely not. It will not. We've seen this. President Uhuru Kenyatta put a halt to anyone in the government who was in procurement. Every.
All suspended.
All. It arose after the Auditor General had shown a 5 billion deficit in the Ministry of Health. 5 billion. Again, it was donor funding. Somehow that 5 billion, these Kenyans are wonderful people. How you can disappear 5 billion shillings? Gone, whoop.
Unbelievable.
Now, did these people not all come back?
They did.
They did.
Government solution to such problems is transfer people. Do you solve the problem? No, you transfer the problem. Okay? It's our history, it's our culture. Does it mean that the president is trying to do something? The answer is yes, he is. I am of the view in such matters that at some level, much as the president may mean well, it may be beyond him to solve in the way he solves it, because a lot of these solutions depend on the people you've appointed. That's why I asked on who were the godfathers of these individuals, who put them there, because high positions in the Kenyan system, you are given those positions with specific instructions as to what you should do beyond what is seemingly obvious.
Was he not instrumental in the appointment of PSs? And like we said, the PS was sacked. The PS was not suspended. Was he not fundamental?
The president, as head of everything, is the appointing officer. But believe me, the process of who gets on that
there's a lot
list,
of canvassing,
the
that
lobbying.
takes place.
the
There's
lobbying
there's
and
canvassing
favors
that
and
takes place
and
to ensure
trading,
that your people get a position.
and horse trading takes place.
So this is why, for me, that there is a message that's being delivered here. That even the people that you brought through your horse trade and your canvassing and your lobbying and whatever, if they are not able to deliver, and there is even a sliver of doubt, or there's a sliver of anything that is going to threaten my position in this administration, we will remove them. And that's exactly what he has done.
They better behave.
Yes.
But
we will remove them. It doesn't matter who it is.
How does a problem at KEMSA threaten the president's presidency? It doesn't. It doesn't even even a squirt of ink. It doesn't really.
No. Not threaten his presidency, threaten his position. What did we talk about here? What do we talk about here with the relationship that we see with Western powers, for which they are fundamental to make sure that you succeed, whether you want to call it an abrogation of state sovereignty, whatever you want to call it. But we know for a fact
You need fun. You need partners.
Yes. You need to be in good books, my friend. 3.7 billion that could have passed through Kenya and then maybe will not pass through for whatever reason. Sure, it might come back, but it's going to be a red flag. It's going to pop off. And if there's somebody who was related somewhere in there that's going to taint that position, out. And that's what I'm saying.
Essentially,
So it doesn't matter who brought the person, because we know it happens, right? It doesn't matter who brought the person. It doesn't matter who canvassed where. It doesn't matter who horse traded where. This person is going to threaten that position. Come and be going.
What is the message here? Is the message on corruption? Is the message on good management of public office? Is that what the president is saying? I hear this. I have received a report. Maybe he has received a report from the Global Fund on what the issue that we're raising, and he looked at it and he considered, well, yeah, there's something here that is not smelling good. And then I'll take action. Why so soon after the COVID scandal? I mean, you ask yourself, is this an institutional issue? Is it a personality issue? Is it a human
issue?
It's barely 2 years since the COVID billionaire scandal involving the same institution.
You can take
publicized widely. Investigations conducted by the National Assembly, by the Senate, by the EACC, by the DCI. All eyes were on KEMSA. New CEO brought in. New board brought in. Staff at KEMSA sent home and told, you go home for a bit. We bring in NYS people to come and work here and people from the military as we clean up the systems, as we understand the systems. People brought back in, vetted afresh, senior management. And then this again, you're like, kwani KEMSA imerogwa?
Eric, do you remember the first time we had in the Ministry of Lands when Charity Ngilu was Minister for Lands?
Yes.
There was some genuine big hoo-ha about cleaning that ministry. Our first attempts at digitalizing everything. And there was this movement and there was that movement, and everything that had previously been wrong was going to be righted, and there was this movement. Did anything change? No. Apart from the discussion and the talk, the complaints that had been there about the Ministry of Lands persisted. They stayed.
Till today.
Yes, the issues about triple, double, quadruple
title deeds.
Did it come to an end? It did not. To date, it took the previous government of Uhuru Kenyatta to actually have some of what was being talked about then realized in terms of this digitalization process.
Yeah.
And the word is some. Okay? So, the problem here isn't KEMSA. The problem here isn't even all these people who have lost their jobs and who have been suspended. The problem is the culture of impunity that we have entrenched and made it part and parcel of the way we do things in the country.
So is the message coming from the president then, wanting to weed out that problem? Is it truly genuinely? I mean, well, look, we can't say because there's no art to tell the mind's description on the face, right? But what is it that he's trying to say? If that has been the way things have been done, then for this action to take place would show that, you know, the president is saying we are not going to allow things to continue business as usual. We saw the billion and the billionaires. You might even want to go as far as looking at some of the individuals that are said to have benefited from the previous KEMSA scandal, and he might be holding up that sword and saying, I'm not going to allow this to happen again.
Really?
It's about perception, man. It's about perception. What do you perceive then from that?
I'm actually honestly and genuinely confused about what is it that could be happening here. What could be happening in this institution? I do not believe that soon after one scandal, somebody else would come into office. Somebody else, you know, who was suspended, the head of procurement was suspended, the CEO was suspended, some senior managers were suspended. People who were doing things, the board was actually also reshuffled. We have a new board, new CEO, new senior management, and you can tell me that they can come in and say, business as usual. If the other guys were able to do it, we can also do it. I'm wondering how, really.
You know,
really, I mean,
right now, okay, if I were to give it a perspective, I would look at what else is happening in the country, okay? Anything that involves a great deal of money. There is talk, I do not have evidence to prove that it is true, but there is talk that we want to buy new ferries and want to import them. Southern Engineering, which is in Mombasa, builds ferries, by the way, just so that you understand. The sort of ferries that would meet the standards that we want, but want to import these ferries. We want to extend the SGR, again, I am told, and want to really, really extend it. This time, we are not joking. We want to take it to Isiolo, then we want to take it again via Isiolo, take another route so that it can go towards Kisumu. Then we want to make sure that it goes up to Moyale, and then we want to find another route that brings it back to Nairobi. The figures that I hear being tossed around 2.1 trillion. You thought it was 350 billion, 2.1 trillion. Okay? Now, that we should extend the railway to those places is a wonderful thing.
yeah.
It's a good thing because it's going to connect Lamu also, railway. That huge port that was put up there. Let's sit back and ask ourselves, when dams are being built, and we're told there were 100, why don't we start with the dams that had been started and which have not been completed? How many are there in the country? And what are the signs that they will be finished? Because with the rains that we have, if dams were finished, the benefits of those dams would be almost immediate. Do we see it happening? There's more talk about new dams than the finishing of dams which had already been started. What am I saying? If I contextualize anything in this country that has to do with a lot of money, the story is rarely what we first hear. There is always a story within that particular story. But for this to happen, the pressure didn't just come from the president waking up and deciding, okay, fine, I'm going to sort this thing out. Now there was pressure. It's someone else's money. When it is our own money, which citizens have raised through what you call taxes, And it's nestled somewhere between KRA and Central Bank, somewhere around there, okay? Or wherever else the money goes before it lands, wherever it's supposed to land. The truth of the matter is, the people who would raise the question would be the Auditor General and us, maybe. And maybe, no, forget the MPs, them, they never raise any questions. Anytime there is money that somebody has donated, the message I'm getting is those people are not going to allow their money to be played around with. That's the message I'm hearing. If it is our own money, just wait and see and look at the projects that we have said we are prioritizing and we want to ensure that they get done. And then observe the procurement issues that are going to be around them. Just take your pick.
Sure. I mean, I fully... But for me, this is why the answer to your question, Eric, then in terms of why would it be, look at this case. In this particular issue, we are not even talking about money that has been dispensed and or misappropriated. We are talking about a process before any of this has actually happened. They're talking about how you're going to even award tender contracts to be able to get the job done. That process has brought some hullabaloo. Knickers are in a twist somewhere. People are saying, no, we cannot allow these things to happen. Okay, fine. Before anything is actually even done, President steps in and says, you know what? There's a possibility that something like this could happen and then taint again so soon after the previous one happened with COVID, because the truth of the matter is those funds that made individuals billionaires because of COVID were donated funds as well.
Yes, they were.
Yes, they were. There was no procurement, anything. It was dash money. Take, do, sort out your issues with COVID. And that all went out the window. Before a dollar is even sent, before the ink has dried on the contracts, there is an idea that something could go south. And he steps in and says, you know what? We're not doing this.
That's what I'm asking. If there's this, remember, City, there's been a story in the papers all this time about the Dongokundu and some contract in Dongokundu and KPA, right?
Isn't that one an interesting one?
This also involved funding.
From the Japanese.
The Japanese.
Yeah.
And the contracting of some certain entity.
And what did the Japanese do?
And it has been a back and forth on which companies to actually contract. Similar to this.
And what did the Japanese do?
What have they done?
They put a halt. They said,
we're not doing it again.
No, let's solve this thing.
Let's address this issue.
Let's address these issues first.
Right?
Okay.
So there have been some communication between KPA, the Japanese JICA, and this issue of procurement. Why haven't we seen any action being taken there? Why this one? I mean, as I'm asking, why KEMSA?
That particular project is actually ongoing. It was started, it's ongoing. Now, when it got to this particular phase again, where now our people, Kenyans, were involved, and there's a ministry, and it's not one ministry, because trade is involved, transport is involved, okay? Now, who is supposed to do what and how? And who are they supposed to give business? And when and which? And so
which gods are meant to be
So the Japanese come in and say, no, folks, this is a fairly straightforward matter, but it seems complicated. Let's resolve these things first. This one, the people who gave this money have said, our money is not going in this direction because we have history of how this thing normally ends up. We are not going in that direction. No. And if there are people who've clearly planned and plotted to take it in that direction, these are the people. What I don't think is in the article is that the president must have been given a lot more evidence than we know.
Yeah.
There's a lot more he was told. There was a lot more evidence he was shown. Mr. President, this is what's going on.
He must have had something from which to act.
He's not acting on a whim.
As I said, I sit back and I ask, really? KEMSA is just reeling from the effects of, one, the crisis around COVID, and the crisis around
HIV,
the HIV procurement of condoms and antiretrovirals. And the officials that were involved there and the fallout of it made people to go home.
Yes.
New people have come in. There's a new round of procurement. Surely you can get to a point where you are blatantly breaking. I'm asking questions like,
take your pick. Ask
if there was an attempt at influencing this, it can't have been at that local level.
No. It can't be, and also
Not at the official level, not at some official who just got in the job and he knows that the person who was occupying this office left under this kind of circumstances because of this kind of people, and then you come and do the same circumstances with those kind of people.
Actually, they can. Don't underestimate the human capacity for stupidity. Don't underestimate it. I'm using the word stupidity because it's what's descriptive of people who understand that there is impunity involved in this and the feeling that they can get away with it.
I do not underestimate it.
Yes.
But then you can look at track.
Yes.
You see, if somebody gets to this point on merit and there's no issue about their track record from where they were before, then you ask suddenly like this, with all the history of the background of what has actually landed you in this particular position, that the vacancy was created because somebody misbehaved, and you come and within 12 months you're also participating in the similar kind of misbehavior. I'm like, hata kama ni capacity ya humans.
You know the reason why I mentioned this, Erica? The amounts we're talking about here are not amounts you come across every day. It is even beyond amounts that you can just walk into a bank and start discussing with them. There is a certain lure that leads to this conspicuous consumption that Kenyans have when they feel that they have arrived wherever it is that they were going to in the first place, that somehow defies any logic that you and I and may discuss here. Because again, if you look at history, are there not some bizarre case where you look and say, but surely, what on earth was this person thinking?
How was that?
How did this come about? And then there's something else. You may be in that position, but it's very easy that something was done on your behalf. You're probably not even aware of what was going on, but it is you at the helm. It is very likely. Now, that is even worse. You will still be blamed. If something happened and you did not know it was under your watch, let me go back to what I said. By the time a president of a sovereign country takes action, I am of the view that the president was given evidence that those who've written these articles are not privy to. And it was a blow-by-blow report, and he told the president, there's this what happened. Mr. President, there's this. And the person who's behind this is this. The evidence is here, Mr. President. This is this. And says, this is this. Can you cross-check? Mr. President, it is so. Okay, fine. Gone. Done. He must have been given evidence. This president has not shown himself in the time he's been in power to be somebody who acts on a whim. No. That he has not shown. And he wakes up in the morning and figures,
let me sack a few people.
I woke up and
this Monday
there was
morning.
this cold wind from this window. It makes me think, no. He doesn't read tea leaves or entrails. This is somebody who I think, whatever he was told, it was supported by evidence.
Yeah, and look, if you're going to look at cases whereby, because you wonder and you say, how would you be so reckless as to do something that would taint the image of an organization that has just been through the ringers? Why would you do that? But then look at the people who are called on because of corruption cases in the very same offices where people before them were arrested, and they put their hands in the same cookie jar themselves. What's the explanation for that? Except this lure for impunity that we're talking about, that allows you to then, or even encourages you, or that you leave all morals and integrity aside and decide to do this because you think, well, I'm not going to be that one who's going to get caught. And my propensity to want a little bit more in my pocket far outweighs any kind of logic that could be applied whatsoever. That principle could be applied at the same time. Look, you sit in a privileged position because you would not be able to fathom. Why would you put yourself in that position again? You can't fathom.
There's something.
But for other folks who are in where these turbines are moving, it's a very different culture.
It's a tough one.
Do you know one of the things that often happens behind the scenes that we don't perhaps see? I remember we were talking about the appointment of one Kamau Thuge, okay? And if you look at his history, it isn't accidental. This man has worked for international finance bodies, okay? When he first came to Kenya to work, he's a Kenyan born, he went to school in Kenya, was on secondment from World Bank, okay? Now, when the World Bank wants to give you money, forget Minister for Finance. The one person they want to know is someone whom they can talk to is your governor of the central bank. It has to be someone who they know understands how they work. It has to be. Now, this is me speculating. There is no way Stephen Kamau Thuge was appointed
without a nod from...
No. It is not possible.
There must have been, at the very least, a no objection.
Yes, if there was an objection, he would not have featured. That's primarily what I'm saying. Now, internationally, one of the things that we want to watch out for, one of the reasons why we're able to accept and receive money, is because there's some rating agencies that determine whether we are low risk, high risk, medium risk, not risk. One of them is called Moody's, as in mood with a Y, yes, okay? We have been rated again. We are now high risk. What that means is when you go out there to go around borrowing money, people are a little reluctant to give you money. That rating may seem like it's innocuous, but it matters. It's how these things work. There is a whole world outside this world that we live in Kenya where people make moves and determine things that affect us. Now, if you want your rating to go up, one of the things you do about good governance is you show you don't tolerate corruption. So, if this is the window we are seeing, then expect a lot more. There are things that people may have planned or they thought they were going to do. Those things are going to be nipped in the bud. Yes. Because if those things are not nipped in the bud, then we will be demonstrating that we have no wish whatsoever to function under the orbit of good government.
Change things.
Yes, and money will not come flowing.
I don't know how far those are. Just like we talked about in the previous administration, we saw former President Uhuru Kenyatta doing the same. Even holding and corruption conference in State House and saying, all right, so here are these agencies and officers that are responsible for fighting corruption. EACC, you're here. Chief Justice, you're there. DPP, you're here. DCI, you're here. Inspector General of Police, you're here. All right, so what are we doing to fight corruption? What more support would you like me to offer? We saw all those conversations.
That's window
The
dressing
president,
for the public to consume.
like you said, he suspended the entire batch of procurement officers in all ministries. And when they came back, they were reshuffled. And he even promised, and Andrew Franklin is reminding us, he promised to buy lie detectors. That every so often, procurement officers and other officials in the ministries would be subjected to lie detector test. That one is now the magician, the Mzungu magician. You're tired.
This one doesn't have sticks. This one they put
Not
wires.
the local magician. They bring in a lie detector.
Eric, it
didn't happen.
You would find that even the procurement of that lie detector, there would have been a scandal. If we had,
I mean, of course, it would be only prudent if if you're the procurement officer. Would you want something that works?
You want something that works the way you like it to work.
So, okay. It's a big move here by the president on sacking the PS and cracking the whip at KEMSA. Let's see how much further this goes, and let's see whether we can actually get to understand what exactly is going on with the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, reforming the KEMSA, what the journey is, and how far it will go.